Dallas Cowboys wide receiver Jalen Tolbert has another massive practice. What could his role be like in the Cowboys offense this year? All that and more this episode of the Locked On Cowboys podcast.
You are Locked On Cowboys, your daily Dallas Cowboys podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Locked On Cowboys. Locked On Cowboys.
Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. We'd like to thank you for making us your first listen of the day. I am your host, Marcus Mosher. You can follow me on Twitter at Marcus_Mosher. And joining me today, as always, is Landon McCool. Check him out on Twitter at McCoolBCB. Landon, the Cowboys wrapped up practice on Tuesday. Another really good practice.
Yeah.
What was your biggest takeaway from this practice?
Man, it's hard not to be deafened by the drumming of Jalen Tolbert at this point. You know, we started out this conversation talking about the drum beat, and now it's like he's Keith Moon, you know, like from The Who. And it's just like drum soloing. It's gotten quite ridiculous. You know, it's gone from just a steady drum beat to a loud, you know, kind of almost gong show level a thumping of a loud percussive device in order to get everyone's attention. I think it's, you know, we've kind of reached a point, honestly, that I never thought we would get to where, you know, you see Michael Gallup continue to have really good practices as well. It's not like he's had bad practices, but are we to the point now where we're discussing a true wide receiver 3A and 3B situation? Like, has Tolbert shown us enough now that it's not just like, oh yeah, he's wide receiver 4, but it's like, hey, maybe he should be getting some of these snaps that normally would all go to Gallup, just because he's so dynamic and is just so confident playing such good football right now. You just maybe can't keep him off the field.
I thought about that as well yesterday. I'm like, maybe there's just a chance where Tolbert fights his way onto the field and you just have a heavy rotation at wide receiver. Been around football a lot in my life. I think an easy way, a simple way just to kind of classify what kind of camp Jalen Tolbert's having is, I think he's officially a dude now, right? Like, he's a player. And I know that sounds so simple, but it's kind of what it is. Like, can you play or can't you play? And it seems like Jalen Tolbert has announced to everybody, like, hey, I'm a part of this wide receiver corps now.
That catch he made yesterday, like the level of like confidence and execution he showed, and just like, and you know, precision and technique, like that's the thing, is that, you know, I've been struggling to kind of quantify this, because it is one of those things where we went in and we're hoping for like a minimum floor, and what we've gotten is on a whole nother level, right? And so it's like, it's hard to put into words exactly like, well, what should we do here? And it kind of became clear, you know, during the game, and then definitely after the game, him coming back and then having this practice, right, that this dude's operating on a different level than the rest of these guys.
I mean, we have,
right? Like,
there's been days that have been better than others, but there hasn't been a bad day yet, right? Mm-hmm. Like, okay, hey, he's struggling with drops, he's not getting open. It just seems like every day, hey, an amazing catch on third down by Jalen Tolbert, or this highlight grab in the back of the end zone, or I think he scored multiple touchdowns in yesterday's practice. So despite having the one play that everybody went bonkers over, he had a really good practice outside of that one.
On top
catch.
Of that. Yeah, absolutely. And I think that's what it is that it's like, we were hoping for a steady drumbeat, and what we've gotten instead is starter plus level play from him. Like, I don't think that's unreasonable to say. I mean, he's been the star of camp at least multiple days out here, like better than other wide receivers out here that are going to be Pro Bowlers and all pros. Not better, but like, you know, standing out in amongst those. So I think that it's time for us to at least start to consider the idea that Tolbert is not just a wide receiver 4, but not just a depth piece, but a guy that they will want to feature, and, you know, may force his way to even more snaps as the season goes on.
All right, so let's break this down a little further. So let's say Tolbert is that dude, and he's somebody that the Cowboys have to get out of the field. How do you do that? Because I might be wrong, but I think his best job is when he's in the slot and he can give you like a little bit of a vertical aspect. However, the play that he made in the Jacksonville game was as an outside receiver. How do the Cowboys find ways to get him involved on offense?
You're following the train of thought that my brain had at about 3:00 in the morning when I couldn't sleep last night. And the only thing, the inevitable thing that I keep coming back to, I think the Cowboys are just going to play more four wide receiver sets than
That's
they were
probably
previously.
the answer, right?
And honestly, like, I think that's kind of what we've already seen a little bit, right? So, and again, even though I'm the guy who charted preseason training camp formations, 1 year, we have to be careful about, formational tendencies in preseason games, right? Like we've talked about it before. In the preseason, the ultimate goal is not necessarily to win. It's to keep people healthy. It's to not necessarily show your hand schematically. But having said all that and given you all the they were in 4 wide receiver set at like at least the 20 to 25% time on offense in that first preseason game. That's huge increase on where they were last season. And I'm pretty sure it was the highest number of any team in the NFL in the first week of the preseason. So it could very well be that, part of our conversation about tight ends and running backs and it may be kind of the answers that we're looking for may be in the fact that this team might be getting ready to be playing a lot more 3 and 4 wide receiver sets than they even did last year.
So maybe you do more 4 receiver sets. Well, we have Mike McCarthy talking about more 6-man protection this year, right?
Yeah.
Having the running back help you in protection. And maybe you use 4 receivers and you use 2 slot receivers, and that's just your offense. And you try to get more guys on the field that can make plays after the catch, that can create some layup throws. I wouldn't be surprised with Tolbert's development if that's where we're heading. The last thing I wanted to ask you, because I had somebody ask me yesterday, they said, what type of player could you see Jalen Tolbert being? Because there's a lot of people that like to have like pro comps, and that's the way they see players. And they asked me, and I honestly, I couldn't come up with a really good name. So I'm asking you, like, is there a certain player or certain type of player that Tolbert reminds you of?
I mean, again, maybe I should have just called you at 3:00 in the morning when I was having all these thoughts. You might have been awake at that point.
Yeah.
Last night I was thinking about it, and I actually think that you have to look at the 2 other players on this team. I think he is somewhere on the scale between Michael Gallup and CeeDee Lamb. He is very similar in size and somewhat of his game to Michael Gallup, but he has skill sets that are similar to CD, right? He's a slot operator. He can get in and out of his breaks well. He can go up and get the football. I think he's I think as far as style, I'm not saying that his skill level is this, right? But I think as far as style goes, he's a lot more Michael Gallup than he is CeeDee Lamb. But he is, I think if you were to if you're putting these 2 players on either side of a scale and you have a slider between the 2 of them, he'd be all the way closer to Gallup, but he'd still have a notch or 2 towards CeeDee Lamb. I think that's kind of where I have him on the spectrum. He's just very physically similar, despite their game being different, very physically similar to Michael Gallup. And it's just interesting to see them both out there. It's easy to get them confused on the field, to be honest.
It took me a while, but I did come up with one name that I wanted to run by you just quickly.
Let's hear it.
But what about I don't think he's going to be this player, but like peak Adam Thielen, who played a lot in the slot for Minnesota, but could also play on the outside. He's over 6'1", over 195 pounds, not super fast, but not slow either. That's kind of where I'm thinking for Tolbert.
Yeah, I like it. Just like not a guy who's going to burn you necessarily with just raw speed, but has enough athleticism throughout his game that he can elevate as he needs to attack above the rim. He can separate with his route running, and he's physical. I think the difference between this year and last year is obviously his confidence.
Yep.
And that confidence has unlocked his ability to play the football through physical contact in a way that he just was not able to do, or just not confident enough to do last year. He has a kind of a my ball mentality now that just really wasn't there last year.
Let's talk about Micah Parsons, who had a dominating practice before he had a little bit of a health scare. We'll get to that next. This episode is brought to you by Nutrafol. Did you know that 80% of men will experience hair thinning in their lifetime? It's normal, but it doesn't have to be your fate. you can get ahead of thinning with Nutrafol. Nutrafol is the #1 dermatologist recommended hair growth supplement clinically shown to improve your hair growth with visible thickness and visible scalp coverage. Nutrafol's hair growth supplements use physician-formulated, natural science-backed ingredients. Their drug-free, patented technology provides consistent and reliable results without compromising your sexual health. Go to Nutrafol.com/men to take their hair health wellness quiz. It helps you identify the causes of your thinning hair, and Nutrafol will give you a personalized plan for your better hair health throughout the whole body wellness. Nutrafol supports healthy hair growth from within by targeting root causes of thinning hair, such as stress, hormones, environment, nutrition, lifestyle, metabolism through the whole body health. And it works. In a clinical study, 84% of men have showed improvement in their hair after 6 months. So take the first step to getting visibly thicker, healthier hair. For a limited time, Nutrafol is offering our listeners $10 off your first month subscription and free shipping when you go to Nutrafol.com/men and enter the promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Find out why over 4,000 healthcare professionals recommend Nutrafol for healthier hair. Nutrafol.com/men. That is spelled Nutrafol.com/men and enter promo code LOCKEDONNFL. That is Nutrafol.com/men, promo code LOCKEDONNFL. Welcome back to the Locked On Cowboys podcast, everydayers. We're going to be back tomorrow answering your Twitter questions. So make sure you guys tune in for that. And then on Friday, getting you ready for the Cowboys' next preseason game, I believe against the Seattle Seahawks at 10 p.m. Eastern time, 7 p.m.
That's right, 10 p.m. Eastern time, which is going to be fun for you and fun. Frankly, it's going to be fun for Cowboys fans. I mean, it's a 9 p.m. Central start. I was thinking about that. Like you're going to be watching third teamers playing at 11:30 at night on Saturday. That's a Saturday night if I've ever heard.
Can't wait. Let's talk about Micah Parsons. So first of all, off the top, got hurt. Sorry, let me rephrase that.
Yeah,
got a little banged up in practice. He got cleated in the leg. He's fine. I know anytime there's a Michael Parsons health scare, everybody gets upset, but it seems like he's fine, Landon.
It's the classic he got hurt, but he's not injured situation, right? Like, ouch, but I'm fine. He'll be okay. Listen, there's a reason that any injury news towards Micah is greeted with full on panic. I mean, the guy, we're out of words to say about the guy at this point. Hyperbole has failed me. I've got a thesaurus in front of me and it's not helping. Like, we have run out of positive things to say about Mike Parsons before he got cleated in the leg. I mean, frankly, the reason he probably got cleated in the leg is because he destroyed practice before that. He had 2.5 sacks at least. A couple other ones where we saw like clips of that. I'm pretty sure that, he probably would have ruined that play as well. I got to say, we talk offline about beat writers and stuff all the time. I heard an interview with Michael Gallup yesterday on the radio, who's one of my favorite beat writers. If you aren't following him, you absolutely should. And he kind of helped crystallize it clear. Sometimes it's hard to see the scale that Micah Parsons is operating on, right? Because they close it down so quickly when he gets around. He's it's so bang bang. He's touching the quarterback. The quarterback's still allowed to throw the ball, and so it's sometimes hard to quantify it. But it's the little things you see in the moments before they shut down the snap, right? It's the hand usage that he's using that no one can stop him. No one has been able to stop him. And the fact that he's doing stuff like, and I'm sure the video went around. I'm sure you guys saw it. He's pulling Mozzie aside. He's trying to help him, learn some hand techniques. I really do believe Micah when he said that he wants to take this defense out, this team out into the deep end. He's going to drag this team out into greatness, and I think we've seen it. We've heard him talk about it. We've seen other people close to him talk about him acting like this. We've seen the results of it on the field. If you aren't excited about what Micah Parsons is bringing to your team this year, I don't know how to get you more hype, but I'm here to tell you that it's exciting. It's extremely exciting.
Yeah. So a couple things. I was actually listening to another Michael Gallup interview. This is probably a week ago, and he was talking about how dominant Micah Parsons is. And he said he's the best defensive player that he's ever seen. So I want to put that in context a little bit. He was with the Raiders when Khalil Mack won the Defensive Player of the Year award. And he was with the Chargers when Joey Bosa was having a ridiculous start to his career. Then he was also with the Chargers when they had Sean Merriman, right? So for him to be a whole tier better than some of those guys just shows you where we're at right now. I'm also going to peel back the curtain a little bit. Our guy, David Locke, who does the Locked On podcast, started this Locked On network. He always tells us to play the hits, which basically means talk about the biggest stories, talk about your most important players. We could do that seriously every single day with Micah Parsons and talking about how he would dominate practice, but it would basically be the same episode running over and over because
Locked On Parsons would be honestly, the new title of the show.
That would be the thing is Parsons has just been so consistently dominant in every single practice. It almost gets boring talking about how great he's been.
And honestly, to peel the curtain back a little even further, I told Marcus before the show, I was like, look, we haven't talked enough about Micah, or we haven't talked a lot about Micah because we could talk about him every single day. We've tried to do our best to talk about other stuff, but it's been long enough. I'm allowed to talk about Micah today. And so that's why we're out here discussing it, because look, I mean, it would feel like there would be an enormous hole in our coverage if we didn't talk about Micah Parsons, because obviously he's the best player on the team. I think I could easily say that.
Yes.
I think that, there's lots of other aspects of the team we have to cover, but every once in a while we need to check in and tap into the level of excitement that we are owed with what we have in this guy and what he's about to unleash on the NFL.
The other thing is, longtime listeners of this show know I'm very much a pessimistic Cowboys fan by nature, right? Yeah. One of the reasons as of late, the last couple of years, that I haven't felt so doom and gloom is because you have somebody like Micah Parsons who just gives you a chance in any single game that you're in. Even last year when Dak Prescott went down, it didn't feel like the end of the world because you felt like Parsons alone and Parsons and the defense could keep them afloat. And they absolutely did. They beat the Bengals in week 2. They beat the Super Bowl champion Rams in week 3. They beat Washington, was it in week 4? Like, Parsons kept things afloat, and it feels like now going into year 3, not only can he do that, but I think there's a chance that even against some of these really good teams that they're going to play this year, like the Bills and the Dolphins and the Jets, that he's just so dominant that he's going to give you a leg up against even Super Bowl contenders.
Yeah, I mean, just again, we got to move on, but just to kind of give the context, he did all that stuff last season and was incredible, and he looks better, like markedly better than he did this camp than last camp. Like, his hand usage looks expert. He doesn't look like a freak of nature who's still learning how to do it. It looks like he's learned what he's doing now. And so I'm excited to see it all get unleashed.
To use one of my favorite movie quotes, this is like when Happy Gilmore learned how to putt.
That's exactly
right. Now that he's got the hand work done, it's like, you're done. There's just no chance of you being able to consistently stop him outside of double and triple teaming him. And that's going to leave opportunities for DeMarcus Lawrence one-on-one and Osa Odighizuwa and all the other players that the Cowboys have on defense. So it's a good time to be a defender on that Cowboys defense because of Micah Parsons. Lena, let's move on and talk about some other notes from training camp practice yesterday. Next. All right, Lena, we have just a few minutes left, but what were some of the other takeaways that you had from practice on Tuesday?
Well, I felt like the defensive backs had a mostly pretty good day, which was nice to hear. I mean, I think that wasn't terribly surprising just because they've been doing, great work for the most part, for a while. I also kind of wanted to throw out there that it felt like D-Law had his best pass rushing day. We obviously have a lot to talk about with Micah Parsons, but D-Law is a guy that, a much like Tyron Smith in the sense that they are very, protective. They know what they have in D-Law. They're not necessarily trying to put him out there and expose him a bunch. They want to keep him healthy. They want to make sure he gets his work, but he's not getting a ton of reps. And I think that's why guys like Tyron Smith and DeMarcus Lawrence aren't getting a lot of, kind of hype and recognition the way that these other guys are, because simply the volume of what they're doing on the field is a lot less than these other guys. But D-Law himself, wrecked practice as well. He was rushing on the left side during practice or on the offense's right side, inside at tackle with Micah Parsons, and then they were trying to run stunts with two of them, and that obviously didn't go well for the offense. Lawrence was all over the place, and had multiple sacks inside at defensive tackle. I have a feeling that they're going to focus on that a lot on third downs to try to get him on the same side as Micah Parsons. Go ahead.
I got one note for you that I wanted to.
Yeah.
Todd Archer was doing a thread yesterday on some of the biggest winners from practice, and he mentioned that the Cowboys are kind of committed to using Leighton Vander Esch more on the edge as a pass rusher, which, listen, they did this last year. It's nothing new. I thought the results were not very good last year, honestly, when Vander Esch rushed the passer. But Archer's note was he looks so much more comfortable doing it this year. The hand technique and the handwork is better. What are your thoughts there?
Yeah, I think the one rush that I did actually see the rush that he was referring to. And I think what happened is that there was a miscommunication on the stunt pass off between Awesome Richards and I think it was, that's another thing we can talk about, Hoffman. They've actually swapped Hoffman and Farniak back. So Hoffman is playing guard again and Farniak is playing center again. He looked smooth kind of going around the edge, but I don't know if he necessarily won because of technique usage is more of a miscommunication between the guard and the
you just
tackle.
have so many good edge rushers. You don't need to use Vander Esch there. That one I just don't get.
I think it's more about creating confusion with formation. Like they get you kind of getting the idea that he's going to be doing this, and then it'll be like a sim pressure or something where he drops off into coverage. Look, they're throwing a lot of stuff at the wall right now to see who can do what in order to kind of, I think, formulate new alignments and formations.
My only problem with that is we saw it last year, though. Like we saw Dan Quinn try to do this last year. It's just one of those things I just don't get. Maybe it'll work this year and I'll look so stupid, but I'd rather just give those opportunities, those pass rushing opportunities to Sam Williams. Or if you're going to rush a linebacker, I'd kind of rather see it be Overshawn just because of his bend and athleticism.
Yeah, maybe. Yeah, maybe that's part of what we'll see too. Is the several other linebackers kind of do this if Leighton can find success here. Who knows exactly what the end game is here. I think it's an interesting note, but I'm still not quite putting a ton into it yet.
Last couple things. TJ Bass, the Cowboys undrafted guard from Oregon. I always say it the wrong way. People always make fun of me. Played a little bit with the starters yesterday at left guard. How did you think he looked in the preseason game? And then what are your expectations kind of moving forward?
I think he looked better in the preseason game than he did in practice. I think the calls for him being a gamer might be true. I mean, he certainly seemed more comfortable, played with more power and confidence. Maybe that's because he's playing against a lower quality defensive line than what he's used to playing against. I don't know. He got into practice yesterday with the ones after it looked like a ball fell on the ground and kind of may have, hyperextended the knee or something like minor. It didn't seem very serious, but he was able to walk off, and they put Ball in. I thought Ball did. They put Bass in, and Bass I think did fine throughout for most of the rest of the practice. I think they're still trying things out there, still trying to figure out exactly who's going to be the best fit. And clearly indicating that by moving on Farniak and Hoffman. I just don't know that they, we still got 2 preseason games left, and maybe we'll see something from Bass or from Farniak that makes you feel a little bit more confident about where they are with this. But I still feel like they've got a ways to go before we're going to feel comfortable with Farniak or Bass or Ball being the kind of backup interior guy. Or I guess even more so, not even just the backup interior guy, but like the 6 offensive linemen off the bench, because the idea is that you move Tyler out to tackle and then a guard in, if that's the idea. So
well, let me ask you this: is there a chance that it's just neither of those guys, and it's Austin Richards that's the 6th guy, or maybe if it's a right tackle situation, it's Matt Waletzko? I guess
I honestly think it's all on the table. Like I honestly think that we've been under the impression that Tyler, the obvious plan is to kick Tyler out to tackle and then play a guard, but I don't know that that's necessarily I don't know what the plan is. I think we're still kind of trying to figure it out. And I don't know that they know what the plan is yet. I think they probably have a couple of different ideas of what they could do, but they're not probably certain yet what the best solution is based on who's playing the best. So if it's Awesome Richards, then yeah, maybe he's just a left side backup. If it's TJ Bass who gives you the best play at guard, then yeah, it's a TJ Bass in and then Tyler to left tackle or something like that. So I think they got to figure out who their sixth best offensive lineman is and what position that they play when they're the best, and then kind of configure the situation based on that. And if not, they probably are going to have to go out and get a veteran offensive lineman if they don't feel like any of these guys are a good enough solution to make them feel comfortable, as a replacement in game.
And again, you don't have to go out and sign that player right now. We've talked about this all off season long. If you need that kind of sixth or seventh offensive lineman who's placed in the interior, you can usually get them first week of September, sometimes even later than that. So the Cowboys have time, but let's see how things go in the preseason before they have to, go to the free agent market and find a guy.
And maybe even in the regular season, maybe you carry these guys in and you wait for an injury before you sign somebody, right? Because like you feel confident enough that Richards or Waletzko can get you through the end of the game and then you figure out a week-to-week solution.
And you mentioned somebody like Gabe Jackson, who's I think 32 or 33 years old. I got a feeling Gabe Jackson's not coming in to sign just to be a backup, but he might sign to be a starter, like for 10 games or whatever. If you need him, if you need him for 10 games or whatever, I think you're right. Like they can get through games with Farniak, with Richards. We'll see about Josh Ball. I'm still a little skeptic that he's going to make the 53-man roster, but we'll see. All right, that is it for today's show. We want to thank you for making Locked On Cowboys your first listen of the day. Again, every day we'll answer your Twitter questions tomorrow. Friday, we'll get you ready for the preseason game, so make sure you tune in for that. Go follow the show on YouTube, Locked On Cowboys over there. We are free and available on all platforms. Follow Landon on Twitter at McCoolBCB. I'm at Marcus_Mosher. We'll see you guys right back here tomorrow.